Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to episode 21 of the In a Crowded Room podcast, where this time we're going to talk a little bit about Jussie Smollet. What a story this is. You know, when I very first heard this story, before it came out, that he had faked this, I had said to Laura, this sounds like a planted story. And the reason I did is I'm very, very familiar with the Chicagoland area. When I was in my band back in the day, we spent a lot of time playing Chicago. I knew exactly where that subway was that he was talking about. And first and foremost, Chicago is not Magaland at all. At all. And the other thing I know about Chicago is there is a difference between cold and lakefront breeze cold. It is so cold in Chicago. So the idea that some Trump-loving, MAGA hat-wearing dudes were hanging out at, 2 or 3 in the morning, waiting to jump some guy, it just seemed very odd at the very least. So I wasn't surprised at all when it started coming out that this gentleman made up this story. But what's interesting is I keep hearing people say that they're shocked that he made it up. I'm honestly not shocked at all that he made it up. I'm going to tell you a story in a second that's going to blow your mind. And every bit of it is true. It was one of the weirdest things I had ever encountered ever in my life. It just taught me that people lie all the time about events and who they are, what happened, what occurred, who they are as people. People lie all the time to get what they want. The sad thing about Jussie Smollett is he's getting exactly what he wanted right now. Don't kid yourself. He is not going to jail for any amount of time, if at all, for this lie that he created. But he is a household name now. Everybody knows him. He will absolutely gain opportunity because we live in this horseshit world where social media just pays people, for just views. They don't even care how they get them. And everybody knows this guy now. Everybody knows him now. Yes, he'll lose his job on this television show, but there's a whole book waiting to be written by him about all of this, his life, why he did it, that type of thing. And I know he just got charged with 16 counts. But besides this guy's led a pretty normal life. He's not been in trouble. The jail systems are already massively crowded, massively crowded. They're not going to fill up a cell with Jussie Smollett, who's going to be nothing but a liability to have someone famous inside of jail, when they know that he's not really a menace to society. What he is somebody who's an opportunist that took it too far. And that's why he's fighting it right now. He's fighting this case and saying that I am innocent because that gives him more time in the spotlight. I mean, to me, that's clearly what's going on, because they've already found the checks that he wrote. The guys who committed this beating supposedly on him have already came forward and said, yes, he paid us to do it. They found where he bought the rope that was supposed to be the noose that was around his neck. They have text messages between them talking about it. I mean, this is an open and shut case, and the Chicago Police Department, who's been under heavy scrutiny, would not have come forward and made this claim against him had they not had it just signed, sealed, and delivered. So he's just fighting it right now to try to make a bigger example, to say that he's just, being mistreated because of who he is, because he's gay and he's black. And it's neither of those. It's because you're an asshole, Jussie. That's why, you're in trouble with the law. And like I said, the sad thing is, think how many people know who Jussie Smollett is today versus, before this happened. Before this happened, I couldn't have told you who Jussie Smollett was. If I tripped over him, I wouldn't know who he is. But now he's a household name, and I'm sure he has interviews lined up from here to the moon. And when this whole thing gets resolved, then he's eventually going to have a real big story. And, say you do want to be a criminal and you do want to do stuff like he's doing. Talk about poorly planned. I mean, this is ridiculous. The guys that did it were on his TV show. They were extras. I mean, it's just, this is terrible, And I hate that this guy's getting his time. But look, I'm talking about him, right? And this is why he did it. And, from that standpoint, yeah, he's getting what he wants, but he's going to have to live with the rest of his life this lie. And maybe he has a plan to spin it. And my guess is that is what he's thinking, that he does have a plan that he thinks will win to spin this. Maybe it's some sort of sympathy plan. Who knows? He's already called himself the Tupac of acting, which I think is ridiculous. He is no Tupac, that's for sure. Tupac lived it, man. I mean, yeah, so that's crazy. But like I said before, I've seen this. I've seen people live lies, and to the point where they don't even know that they're lying anymore, I don't think, Have you ever seen that, where someone lies so much that they forget what the truth is? I've actually seen that. I'm going to tell you a story right now, and every single detail of this story is factual. Back in 2007, I get a phone call from my friend Michael Callahan. Now, Michael Callahan, he's a great guy. I love Mike. He's like a little brother to me. He is a young dude. He's about 4 years younger than me. I met him years ago when I was putting together one of my first films, because he's a young actor from Omaha, Nebraska. And he was friends with Chris Klein, the actor that played the football player in both Election and in American Pie. Ostreicher, he played in American Pie. He's gone on to do a ton of other movies since then. But Chris is from Omaha, and Chris is like a big brother to Michael. So I met Chris through Michael, and my friendship with Michael just evolved to what it is today. And I love the kid. And again, I just think of him like a little bro. So when I first moved out to Los Angeles, he did as well. And he was trying to get his acting career off the ground. And he was doing pretty good in the beginning. He got a couple of national commercials. You probably recognize Mike from this Nintendo commercial he did. He did a Nintendo commercial that was absolutely huge worldwide. If I say it, you might even remember it. It was this Nintendo commercial where it was this new Game Boy, and the person walked in the store, and that was Mike, and he bought the Game Boy, and he walked outside of the store, and he was playing it, and the whole world around him came to life like cartoon. Like the world turned into a cartoon that was dancing around him, and it was a huge, huge commercial that did really well, and I was so proud of Mike. And I get this phone call from Mike telling me that he has this person that he wants me to meet. And he's not sure what to think of this person, but this person is sleeping on his couch. And I said, well, who is he? And he said, well, I think he's a billionaire, and he wants to finance whatever movie I want to make. And I just started laughing, because I'm like, really? So just, what, a billionaire just walked into your place and accidentally fell into your couch and said, I want to finance a movie? And he said, well, that's it. He's like, I need to tell you about this, and I want you to meet this guy. And the story is, this guy flew into Los Angeles to buy a property, supposedly. He was looking to buy property in Malibu. And he got mugged at the airport, which this does happen from time to time, especially if you pick up your car off-site, which there's a lot of high-end rental places that you can pick up really high-end cars off-site. But the weird thing is, supposedly he got mugged before he ever made it out of the LAX parking lot. So he had no ID, no credit cards, no anything. And I'm like, well, how do you end up at your place? Well, I guess Michael had went to a party where this guy was at. He knew somebody at the party. Michael met him, befriended him, heard this story, and throughout the night of them drinking and hanging out and all this stuff, this guy basically said, yeah, I don't have anywhere to stay, because my credit cards and my ID and everything's gone. But if you could let me stay at your place for a few days, then once I get my ID back, then, I'll take care of you for it. I'll give you, I think he offered him several $1,000s or something to stay at his place. And I was like, well, why didn't he stay at the person's place that had the party that you went to? And he was like, well, that person he knew, kind of. He wasn't like really good friends with him or anything. And he was worried about kind of like cramping his style because he had a kid. And Mike's like, I don't have a kid. So I thought, hey, you could stay with me. And again, there's just enough detail here that I'm like, well, I guess if this person had a kid, I could see that. But still, I go, why would he be, sleeping on your couch? It just seems really weird, especially when you just meet somebody. And Michael's like, yeah, I know. And I go, well, Michael, I mean, you do realize anybody can just say they're a billionaire. Why do you believe him? And he goes, well, that's just it. We got into a long conversation about, him being a billionaire. And he showed me a bunch of bank statements and paperwork, and it looks real. And I'm like, why would he show you bank statements and paperwork? And he said, well, he had that on him, so he was using that as ID to show me who he really was, that he wasn't some freak or anything, that he really was a very wealthy billionaire that was coming out to Los Angeles to buy property. And then Michael says, in fact, he said he's looking at property tomorrow with Casper Van Dien, the actor. I'm like, what? And he's like, yes. I'm like, huh. And he's saying he's going to give you money. Why? And he goes, well, we just started talking, and he knows that I'm trying to be an actor and I'm working hard and I've been working on this script. And he really liked my script idea. And he told me he's looking to get into the industry. And that's part of the reason why he's buying a house out here. And he's saying that he wants to sponsor me. He wants to make a movie with me and pay all my bills and do all this stuff until I'm on my own feet in exchange for some points on my career. Now, this actually happens all the time where actors, or bands who are talented, they get a sponsor behind them. Somebody who will basically, bridge the gap when they need money for their bills paid and things like that in exchange for a percentage of future earnings. This happens all the time. It's actually a very smart way to go about trying to, quote, make it in this business, especially if you're an actor. So I'm really interested in what's going on here. And I said to Michael, well, can I meet him? And he was like, yes, I would love you to meet him. I would love you to come over tonight and meet him because we're all going to be hanging out here. And he wants to drink and party and live it up. And I said, okay. I said, well, who's paying for the drinking and the party? And he goes, well, that's it. I'm going to buy the stuff. I'll buy the liquor. I've been buying extra food for him. And I go, if you're paying for his food? And he goes, well, it's really cheap though. And I go, yeah? Why? And he goes, he only eats French fries. I'm like, I'm like, what? And he's like, he only eats French fries and ketchup. I'm like, wow. Like, only? He's like, no, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm like, Jesus. He wakes up and he eats French fries for breakfast. He's like, shitloads of them. And shitloads of ketchup. I'm like, okay, I'm in. This is the weirdest story I've ever heard. I'm totally in. I got to meet this guy. And he goes, well, he's really eccentric, just so you know. I mean, really, really eccentric. He talks really big, and one moment he's like really nice, but then he talks like really big. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, you'll see. You'll see. Just come over. Just come over. So at that time, I tell my then roommate, my other buddy Clint was out here, and he was trying to get in the business, and he was living with Laura and I for the first month that he came out, or just to get on his feet. And Clint is a really, really smart guy, and he's got a history in managing massive 400-car dealerships. But he wants to get into, the film side of finance. So I say to him, Clint, I want you to come with me, and I want you to just, get a vibe for who this guy is and see what you think. So we go out there, and we meet this guy, and he goes by the name Greg Humble, Humble. And he's got this just cute little Mexican girl with him, just adorable. And I come to find out later, by the way, he's saying that is his assistant. He's saying that this adorable little girl is his assistant. And we find out at the party that she's his assistant, but as of 24 hours ago, when he flew in, he met her at the airport. She's also an actress that is trying to make it, in which, from hearing her story, he has already, quote, hired her. But again, this is dependent upon him getting his ID, his wallet, his cards, all this stuff, which were supposedly taken from him. And he's supposed to get them back in 2 to 3 days' time. And I'm like, there's just nothing about this makes sense. I mean, I can't imagine that there's a billionaire alive that doesn't have 20 ways to get to cash if he needs it. But I don't know either. I don't know this guy. I don't know how eccentric he is. I don't know how he runs his stuff. I don't know anything about him. So I meet him, and he's wearing what should be a 2X shirt, like double X, but it's a medium. So it's super tight where he's not fat, but he's pudgy. And he appears to be even more pudgy because he's got this shirt on that's like 3 sizes too small. And he has like these white tennis shorts on, kind of like baggy but short shorts. And, you know, right away he's a nice guy. And, I was just talking about, hey, I heard you got mugged. And he's like, yeah, no, it was crazy. And he goes over the whole story. And I'm like, cool, man. So here you're entering the business or trying to get in the business. And right away he's like, yeah, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I make films. I'm on this show, Paranormal State. And he's like, yo, Mike was telling me about Paranormal State. Yeah. I hear you want to do a movie about your family. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I'm actually putting it together right now. It's called American Ghost Hunter. And he goes, could you do it for $5 million? And I'm like, oh, yeah. I mean, I could do it for way less than that. And he goes, well, I'm good for $5 million if you need it. And I'm like, okay, is that how this works in your world? You're good for $5 million. And I'm thinking in my head, all right, I need to start hitting him with some like industry questions to see if he understands the lingo of what's going on. And I'm like, well, for $5 million, I'm assuming, you want, heavy points. And he's like, well, it depends. And I'm like, depends on what? And he's like, well, if you want to work for my company and manage the film division, then I would take less points up front on your film, and we can do that. And we start getting into like talking, and the odd thing was, he kind of knows the lingo. There's just things that you could listen for to see if someone's real or not, but that doesn't mean jack shit. He could also just be somebody that pays a lot of attention to detail, and he's been in meetings or around meetings about film production, and he's just, working off of memory. Because he's talking about film cameras and film stock, and if we want to do it on Super 16 or 35 and the advantages of HD, and he seems to know film production, which is kind of awkward because I didn't expect that. I'm like, wow. But he's also saying really ridiculous shit. Really, really ridiculous shit like, yeah, tomorrow I had this meeting scheduled with Keanu Reeves, but I just told his agent, listen, when that fucker gets some acting lessons, he can meet with me. And I'm sitting here going, man, you didn't say that. If you'd said that in this town to Keanu Reeves' agent, you'd never get a fucking meeting in your life with an actor. And he's just throwing big stuff around like that. Like, telling me these stories, how he told this actor to fuck off and this director that he'd never work with him. And he's got $300 million that he's going to throw into films. And he's looking at a $60 million property tomorrow. And he mentions that he's doing this with Casper Van Dien. And I say to him, that's really cool, dude. You should have my friend Clint come along with you because he's getting into the finance side of things. And I'm sure he'd love to check out the property and see what it is that you're looking at. And he's like, oh, yeah, no problem. Have him come along. And I introduce him and they kind of talk back and forth. And the reason I did this is because not just anybody can go look at a $60 million property. Like, you have to be vetted and you have to be a qualified buyer, which means before they show you these properties, they're going to say, hey, we need to look into your finances to make sure you're a qualified buyer, which means there's a certain amount of income you have to make and a certain amount of assets that you have to have before they'll even show you this property. So I'm saying I'm going to send Clint along because I know Clint will know this, and Clint will be able to verify if he in fact met with Casper Van Dien to go see this place. And if you don't know who Casper Van Dien is, he's a huge B-flick actor of like sci-fi films and action films, very, very well known in that community, and someone that has a big enough name that he's definitely someone. But what blows my mind is he also tells me in 2 days' time he's meeting with Penny Marshall because he's giving her $15 million for a charity that she's put together. In which, while I'm there, I'm able to hop online and do a little research, and it turns out that Penny Marshall did in fact have this new charity that she was launching, and she was in fact looking for investors. So I'm thinking to myself, this is absolutely crazy. This guy can't be real. This can't happen where some billionaire lands in LA, meets this beautiful little Mexican girl, promises her the world, hires her on spot, then gets mugged. Now, how she survived the mugging or missed it, because she said she didn't see it. She went to the bathroom and he got mugged when she was in the bathroom. How this happened, I can't fathom. And then he winds up at a party of an acquaintance. He meets Mike. Suddenly he's on Mike's couch, promising Mike the world, showing Mike bank statements to prove who he is. Suddenly he's at a party with me. He's telling me he's going to give me $5 million. He's saying he's going to buy a home in Malibu with Casper Van Dien for $60 million. And in 48 hours' time, he's going to meet with Penny Marshall. So because I have my friend Clint going with him to see the home in Malibu to verify who he is, because again, he's not getting in that house to see it unless he's a verified buyer, I also say to him, you know, you should take Mike with you to your meeting with Penny Marshall. You know, she's a director as well. Mike's an actor. If you really want to help Mike out, this would be awesome for Mike to meet her. And he's like, you know what? That's a great idea. Yeah, I love Mike. I think he's great. Now remember, at this time, he's never seen Mike act a day in his life. He has no idea if Mike's a good actor or not. But he agrees on spot to take Mike there. And I'm like, that's awesome. So I'm making my way around this little get-together. I pull Clint to the side. We're already on the same page. He knows what I'm up to. He's like, sweet, dude. I'm going to Malibu. I'll get the story on this fucking guy. And then I pull Mike to the side later, and I go, listen, Mike, my gut says everything about this dude is BS, but he's saying he's meeting with Penny Marshall tomorrow. You're going with him. And he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And Mike looks stoked. In Mike's heart, he just wants this so bad to be real. And I say, yes, you're going with him, and I want to know if she shows up. If Marshall shows up, I'm going to be floored. Because, again, Penny Marshall should do her homework about this guy, and if he's real, her people and her should know that. So this will tell us a lot. Mike's totally in. So the last thing I do is just talk to him a little bit before I leave, and I kind of get his history. And he starts telling me that his family was from Humble, Texas, and he kept saying they pronounce it Humble. And they started a company called Humble Oil, and they basically sold it up the line. It eventually became Exxon. Like, it started out as Humble, sold, it became this, sold, it became this, and then Exxon eventually bought it. So he's saying that he comes from a long list of Texas oil money. Now, at that time, I don't know any Texas oil barons, so there's no way for me to kind of like confirm that at all. But I did do a bunch of research, and I did find out about this family from Humble, Texas. They named it Humble, Texas. They pronounced it Humble. And this family did, in fact, sell off their oil company through a long list of buyers that eventually became Exxon. So the history's there. Now, that doesn't mean that he just hasn't done his homework to find out the history. So basically, I say goodnight to the guy. He's an annoying son of a bitch. I mean, he's just dropping big words all the time. I told this powerful person F off, and this guy to screw off. And, you know, did I tell you about my record label I'm going to start? Oh, yeah, it's going to be bigger than Eminem. Dr. Dre, he's old news. I got the best new talent in the world. He was like, when I'm all said and done and my label's up, Dr. Dre won't even get in the door. I'll tell him that the hack's got to work down the street and all this stuff. And I'm just like, this guy is just ridiculous. And by the way, while I'm there, the dude's eating French fries the whole time. The whole fucking time. He's got these things just going in and out of the oven, and he's just eating French fries nonstop that my poor boy Mike is buying for him. You know, blows my mind. So the next day comes, and true to Greg's word, Clint gets a phone call and a time to meet up in Malibu to look at this huge property with Clint, Greg, and supposedly Casper Van Dien. I'm also working on a different project that day, so I'm not going to be able to talk to Clint till at night. So I'm dying to see what happens. What is going on? So that night, I get home from work. I'm sitting down. I hear a knock on my door. It's Clint. He walks in, sits down, and says, well, I drove all the way to Malibu. I go, yeah, was it, total bullshit? He goes, well, I pulled in. It's a $60 million property. It's ridiculous. I go, yeah? He goes, sure as shit. Casper Van Dien pulls in right behind me with Greg in the car. I'm like, you're kidding me. And he goes, no. And I go, what happened? And I'm like, well, he looked at the place. I go, really? And he goes, yeah. He looked at the place. And did he buy it? And he goes, he said he was going to. And I'm like, and you're sure Casper Van Dien was with him? And he goes, yeah, and they're talking about doing a film and all kinds of stuff. I'm like, you're kidding me. He's like, no, man. I'm like, well, there's no way they could have been shown the property unless they did their due diligence to make sure this guy was a qualified buyer. He's like, right. Yeah, this is crazy. And he's like, yeah. I go, well, I don't know. Something's off. This is crazy. He's like, yeah, I know, dude. He goes, I don't know what to think. And I go, well, let's see what tomorrow brings, because Mike is supposed to meet with him at this Penny Marshall thing. And they're supposed to have lunch with Penny Marshall. And he goes, yeah, let's just wait and see. Let's wait and see. So on the bright side of this whole thing, Clint actually hit it off with the beautiful Mexican girl I told you about, his assistant. And that night, they're actually going to go on a date. And I'm like, Clint, you sly dog, just moving right in there. And he's super excited because they really did hit it off. And she is just a cutie, which is awesome. I'm propping Clint. So the next day comes, and about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I get a call from Mike, and he's saying he's going to stop by. He stops by, walks in, sits down, and I go, so let me guess, no Penny Marshall? And he goes, no, man. I go, see what I tell you? He goes, no, Ted. I'm saying, no, what you're saying is wrong. I go, huh? He goes, yeah, I met her. I go, you're kidding me. And he goes, no, we went to lunch with Penny Marshall, and he's giving her $15 million, he's saying. And they talked about their charity and all the things they're going to be doing, and a new film he wants to do, and his record label that's going to, be better than anything Dr. Dre could do. And he goes, all of it. I go, you're kidding me. He goes, yeah. I go, where's he at right now? And he goes, he's at my house, eating fucking fries, man, a mountain of them. I'm like, you're kidding me. He goes, dude, he eats so many fucking French fries. I'm like, this is crazy. And he goes, yeah, well, he better be real, man. He was like, because I've just been hemorrhaging money, man. I don't got any. And listen, when you're an actor, especially if they don't have money, I mean, they're living on fumes. That's just the way life goes out here when you're trying to make it. And everything Mike has, because he really believes this guy's going to take care of him, he's given this guy. So this dude's buying pounds of fries a day, but he's also driving Mike's car around. He's like, just stupid money, just walking around money. Mike's giving him cash to get whatever he needs when he's out, and he's using Mike's phone, which is long distance, and all these calls he's making back to Texas, and just all this stuff adds up when you're poor as hell. And I'm thinking, yeah, this dude better be real, man, because he's frauding the shit out of everybody if he's not. So I decide that I need to really find out who he is, because something about this whole thing is just not sitting right with me. So basically, I decide I'm going to ask to see the paperwork that Mike saw, the bank statements, all that stuff. So I tell Mike I'm going to come over the next day, and I don't want him to say anything. I'm just going to basically pop in and surprise this guy. So I do. The next morning I get up bright and early, about 8:30 a.m. I drive over alone, which probably wasn't the smartest thing, but I drive over alone. I knock on the door. Mike's leaving to go to work. He says Greg's asleep in the other room on the couch. So I walk in. I sit down on the couch and I say, hey, Greg, I need you to wake up, man. And he wakes up and he's rubbing the sleep out of his eyes, and he's like, hey, what are you doing here? What's up? And I said, well, listen, I really care about Mike. He's like a little brother to me, and he's super excited about everything that you're promising. And when it comes down to it, I'm a grown man. I make my own films. I'll figure out my own way. Whether you were real or not, I don't care, But I do care that these guys got everything wrapped into the promises that you're making right now. And what little money Mike has, he's giving it to you. And I go, I just need to know that you are who you say you are. So I'm going to need to see the bank statements that you showed Mike. I need to see it, man. I need to know that this is real. And he pauses and he stares at the ground for a long time. He looks back at me and he goes, you think I'd lie like that? Do you really think I'd do that? I said, Greg, I don't know who you are. And because of that, anything is possible. So I have to work off of facts. And I'm going to need to see that paperwork. He gets up, doesn't say a word, puts on his shirt that's too tight. He's got these tighty-whitey underwears on, which, yeah, he looked ridiculous. He pulls his shorts on. He goes to the other room. He walks out and says, "Is this what you're looking for?" And he hands it to me. And I'll tell you tomorrow what he showed me. And I will complete the rest of this incredibly bizarre story that's only going to become more Tarantino before it's all over. Thank you so much for listening to episode 21 of the In a Crowded Room podcast. I'll be back tomorrow with more. All the best.